Hey, Fierce Hearts. So, welcome to 2026. And this year's already kicking off to quite a start politically. And there's so much energy going on right now. And there's so much overwhelm. And like all the emotions are going on right now. And I find myself getting caught up in it. And then I have my own personal stuff. And it's a lot. How y'all doing out there, huh? So this message, I felt called to share a story that talked about what's been going on for me the last year or so and all the life upheaval that I went through as a means of trying to help give some peace and support. And when we can hear our story from someone else, or we can hear someone else's story, we can hear our story within someone else's story, that helps us heal our process. And I was called to share my experience with what I was going through, or what I did go through, but the heart of it, that felt true, but at the same time that felt like there's another message intertwined with all of it. And what came out is that this moment right now between 2025 and 2026, and as we know, a lot of people know, is that we're moving from the year of the snake, I think it's the wood snake, to the year of the fire horse. And that's going to be a tradition. That's going to be a transition, That's going to be a transition between energies. And then there's the sacred pause. And right now we are feeling there can be some grief. There can be anger. There could be a lot of emotions of what transpired this year. And there can be a lot of grief from the loss of things that we had to let go, because that's basically what the wood snake is asking us, is to shed what no longer serves us. And even though they could be really good things that is good for us to let go, whether that's toxic people or toxic situations or unhealthy patterns and unhealthy belief systems and whatnot, or habits or things that we do that can impact us negatively in a health type way. There's lots of different things that we're being called to change and modify about ourselves, so that we are more aligned with something that is of our highest good. And even though it's good to let go of some of those things, there could still be some grief. There could be, like this rawness, this tenderness about letting go of the familiar and walking into the unfamiliar. And there's this pause and a need of faith for the knowing that we know is coming, but it's not here yet. And that's hard. That is a hard spot, because we know, like, the good stuff, it's almost here. Like, I could feel it. There's some really good things that are just right around the corner, and like so many people are touching on it, and the energy is going to take us, and there's just like things. Oh man, there's so many shifts happening in the subtle realms and behind the scenes and behind the veil and all the, everywhere. But it's kind of hard to see it on the physical. And yet in the physical, we see so much going on in the world that just doesn't confirm with the good stuff that feels like it's coming. And like, it feels bifurcated in a way of like, how are these things connected? And, while it doesn't look great, there could be a sense of what's coming through is that it's a necessary evil of sorts, where this is somehow rattling things that were solid, that we thought were solid, but we're realizing we're so delicate. We thought we're deeply entrenched, but we're actually really fragile. And what do we do with that? And it's a paradigm shift. It's a mental shift. It's questioning our beliefs about so many different things. And so this message is just hoping that it will find someone who's wanting some sort of support and comfort in a crazy time, that you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're feeling all the feels, and we're here for you. And from my experience, thinking about, where I was last year, I was in a completely different state. I was in a relationship. I was living with that person. And then life happened and spirit came through me. And I had quite a few different epiphanies that happened. And all of a sudden I realized, wow, I think I need to move, but not just any kind of move. I need to move somewhere that's right for me. And so that's the long story short of what happened, basically. And it was it's almost like, where do you even begin? Because if you start unraveling the knot, it's like, well, that goes further back and further back and further back and further back. But what really was the catalyst was the ending of a friendship for me. And it was these two women that I thought were my best friends. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty because this would be a really long video if we did. Long story short, I thought they were my best friends, and there's certain ways that we can gaslight ourselves, and they could even be gaslighting themselves, and we could be collectively gaslighting of like, yeah, this is totally what this is. We're best friends, but yet there's no actual connection. And I woke up to that, where they would say, yeah, we're best friends. And I had this assumption that we were really close and whatnot. And then, there was some betrayal that happened where they said they were going to do something, didn't follow through, and, bailed on some commitments. And eventually I just was like, you know what? I deserve better than this. I do, because I do offer them way better than what I'm getting in return. And that's kind of the overarching theme of what I found in some of my relationships in my life, and especially with dating, is that I felt like I was always the one that was giving more than I was receiving. And what I was receiving was crumbs. And I was acquiesced to that my entire life. And when I realized, wow, everyone around me is like low effort towards me. What's that about? And of course, when you're pointing at someone, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. So, all right, how am I low effort towards myself? How am I placating myself? And that goes down a whole rabbit hole in its own way. And so looking at that, I did take an honest look of how I'm abandoning myself and how I am, not making myself a priority and putting other people's needs over mine. And then there's also, the people pleasing sort of thing. But then there's this chameleon sort of aspect of, I want to make sure everyone around me is happy, because if they're happy, then I'll be able to stay and I'll have friends and stuff. But that early on in my, formative years, I didn't have much of a personality, because it was a survival technique. And then I realized that I want to be me. I want to be who I am. And so it's been a growth process, and I definitely am in a place where I am authentically, unapologetically authentic, and I don't know how to not be. And I'm more in my power. When I own my power, I'm like, I don't care what you think. I don't need to be approved. I know who I am. I don't need to be validated. And that's just been a part of my journey. But when applying it to friendships and relationships, when I realized like, wow, I'm doing most of the work around here. And what that would look like is that I was always the one to reach out and say, hey, let's hang out. And they'd say, yeah, totally, let's hang out. But I was always the one. And it's like, okay, well, what if I take a step back and I wait for them to message me first? How long? And it's not a test, but it's kind of, I'll let them step up and make some effort. I have stuff to do, so why do I always have to be the one on top of it? So anyways, kind of taking a step back, and it was not easy, but letting other people step forward. Some people did, and some people didn't. And the ones that didn't just kind of fell off the wayside. So why am I trying to hold on to something that isn't, that I have to work to keep? All relationships, they do take effort, but it should be a two-way street. Both should be putting in effort. And if it's only one-sided, it's not a healthy relationship, whether it's interpersonal or platonic or, romantic or whatnot. Like that's not healthy. And then that can lead into codependency. And anyway, so back to story time with my experience. I went through a really deep healing because I had two friendships that I had to let go at the same time. And they were two friends. We were in this little group together. And without getting into the nitty-gritty of the story, because it would be just too long to share. Long story short, I just felt betrayed. And I felt like they were not valuing me. And to be fair, early on, I did not express myself because I didn't want to shake things up. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. So I was like, I'll just, they hurt me and we'll just move on. Okay, fine. So, a couple years go down the road and we set up, they want to hang out with me for my birthday, and I end up setting up this birthday party with the person I was living with. And long story short, these two bailed on it last minute without much of a reason why or an apology or anything like that. Just like, nope, sorry, we have other plans. And it's like, all right, well, you're supposed to be my best friends. So, and anyways, so on the surface, all right, fine, you didn't get to make it to the birthday. That's fine. But what it ended up doing is actually what I call an access point. And when we're doing really deep healing work, there can be little scuffs that happen on the surface of like, someone really pisses you off or something like that. And it might not be that big of a deal in the moment, but it cuts deep, like really deep. Deeper than probably what is necessary for the situation. And when that happens, that's an indication that you're either healing something early in your life, like childhood stuff or past life stuff, something along those lines. It's really deep, and it's an access point, a current access point to jump into this wormhole into something much, 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 much deeper that is coming up and being triggered by this present moment. So I feel like that's what this little, kerfuffle was basically. If they were well-meaning, but it just hit wrong. And they were not very respectful of me or my time or anything like that. And when I first met them, I did not respect myself in a variety of different ways. And through my personal journey, have come to this place of, the Fierce Heart Alliance. It's all about loving yourself fiercely. And what does that look like? And it's prioritizing myself and my needs and the respect for my time. And, there's lots of different ways it can show up. And so me practicing what I preach, me loving myself fiercely is like, no, I respect my time and I respect your time. And I want my time to be valued because I value other people's. It's basically reciprocity. I want that in relationships, and I wasn't getting it, especially from these two women. And so I sent them a message and I let them know, look, what you did triggered me, and it actually brought up something from the past that really, really hurt, and I never said anything, and that's my bad for not saying anything back then, but I'm saying something now. And I wasn't accusing anything. It was just, this is my experience of what happened. And there were, I ended it with 3 different bullet points of: 1, I don't know what the answer is. I was not looking to end the friendship, but I knew that I needed to say something, and I didn't know how to resolve it. 2, I deserve better. And 3, I was tired of just pretending like things were fine, because they weren't. And then I just left it at that, and I sent it off to them, and waited to hear back from them. And I did hear back pretty quickly, but I was not able to hear it. I was in so much pain, and when I say that it was a painful experience, I am not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form. I've done some shamanic work before, and I've heard of dismembering and dismemberment, and breaking down the self and whatnot. This was full on. It felt like dismemberment. It literally felt like my skin was being peeled off, like I was getting waxed all over my body for days on end. And it was this raw, vulnerable, visceral, just, oh my goodness. It was really intense. And obviously it's like, I'm feeling this, and just because my friends couldn't make it to my birthday party, like I felt like I was being so extra in the moment. And I was like, I just need some space. Like, I just need to figure myself out. And when I said that to them, that I needed space to just figure this stuff out, they took it as like I just didn't want to be friends with them anymore. But actually it was because I just needed to figure out what was happening with me. And so then I'm processing this stuff, and I'm crying, and I'm not proud of it. But I did reach back out to them about 5 months later. And I did apologize, and I said, I'm sorry for the delay, but I was just needing to take care of myself. And there's some really, really deep stuff that came up because of this. And I did have a greater understanding of what was happening, is that there were it wasn't just this situation with these 2 friends. There was this overarching experience of just stuff that was coming up. I had issues with my mom that was suddenly coming up. I had issues with my partner that were suddenly coming up. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Is it me? Like, I swear. And I even had a friend who was in the middle of passing away. So it was it was a really hard time. It was a very hard time for me. All these people that I thought were solid in my life were now slipping through my fingers as if it were sand or something like that. And since then, I had repaired the relationship a little while after that time period. I was able to rekindle things with my mother. We had stopped talking for about a month and rekindled things, and so that was okay. And my friend ended up passing, so I was able to eventually heal and grieve from that, and I was in a better place around that, and rekindled things with the partner at the same time. So there was a lot happening, and these 2 friends, they just basically were on the back burner. I didn't have capacity. I was also starting a different job. I had moved. So many things were happening where I just did not have capacity to even handle that situation with those 2 women. So once I finally got my feet under me, and I was able to, get grips of what was all happening, I realized that every single one of these situations, there was a certain word that was coming up for me. And I kid you not, I cannot remember what the word was at this moment, because I feel like maybe that's a sign I've done so much work around it that I've processed it, and it's no longer a part of my vocabulary. But I want to say it's along the lines of despair. It started with a D, It was like dis something. I literally cannot even think about it. And the more I think about it, the further it falls away from me. So I'm like, okay, we'll just say it's despair. So I came to this point where I'm like, okay, I finally have to sit down. I have to handle this with these two women. I need to reply to their reply to me because of the email that I sent to them. So it was this auspicious time. It was Mercury was in retrograde. Excuse me. Mercury was in retrograde. Oh boy. Mercury was in retrograde. Excuse me. And there was also, like, it was squaring Mars, or there was something going on with Mars, and something else was happening, maybe Uranus or something. But it was this perfect time to really just handle that can of worms and just sit down and look at it and handle it. So I was like, okay, finally, I feel like I've got my feet under me and I can do this. But at the same time, I was able to sit down and say, okay, well, this word despair is showing up in all of these situations. And while they're not necessarily painful on the surface, they are really hitting something collectively. They are all hitting the same thread, the same pain. What is that? What is the underlying theme of all of these things that are happening? So taking a bird's eye view, an eagle view of what's going on, there's like, oh, I'm chipping away at something really deep. Okay, so what is it? So because I've had my bearings under me, my feet under me, I was like, okay, I finally have the courage to sit with this and figure out what this is all about. So I'm sitting at my altar, and because I'm asking these questions and I'm talking about this word, I'm finally speaking energy to this word. I am bawling my eyes out. I was like, oh, I've hit a thread. So I'm sitting at my altar and I'm rattling and I'm saging, and, I'm burning a candle, and, I'm connecting with my guides, asking them to help me move this through, whatever this is. Because like I said, I felt like my skin was being ripped off my body, and I just was sick and tired of the feeling. So help me, Spirit, help me move this through. So I'm sitting there and I'm doing this. And so I realized that somehow, with the issues with my mother and the issues with my friends and the abandonment that my partner triggered, and it was all, somehow it clicked for me that this was hitting my mother wound. Like the mother wound that we're all working on. We all have it, whether we know it or not. We all have it. There's probably also a father wound too, but there's definitely a mother wound. So I was like, okay, well, what does that look like for me? And so it took me down this whole rabbit hole. And while I could talk more about the friendship, that's not really relevant anymore. The three of us has basically decided to go our separate ways, and that's okay. And that's just, it is what it is. I wish them well, send them lots of love. And it is what it is. Sometimes people don't walk with us in our next chapter, and that's okay. So that aside, I really want to emphasize what happened on this healing journey more so than what happened with the friendship, because as I mentioned before, this experience with all of the things that I was going through was an access point to the deeper stuff. And it had occurred to me that it was my mother wound, especially with the stuff coming up with my actual mother, that was telling. So I was sitting at my altar. Luckily, I had the house to myself, and I was just processing. And there was this word that just kept showing up for me. And I'll be honest, I cannot even remember what the word is. This word would bring me to tears if I if I were to say it. But now, because I've done so much work around it, this word is no longer a part of my vocabulary. But I'm going to say that it was basically despair. It started with a D. I can't even bring it up, and I'm not even going to waste the time to think about it. So we're going to say it was the word despair. So I'm sitting there and I realized that, wow, this word is the undercurrent for all of these situations that it brought me to this moment of despair. Okay, let's put a pin in that one. And then I realized, oh, okay, this is a mother wound. I think this is touching on what I think would be. I think this is a mother wound. Okay, so put a pin in that too. And so I've done a lot of work with different deities, and I even worked with the dark goddess for a little while. And so it's like I want to connect with the energy of the dark goddess, or I want to work with the energy of XYZ, or whatnot. And so it's like, okay, I want to work with the Divine Mother. And it also brought me along this journey of realizing that in my own personal work, I have bypassed the Divine Mother. And the spiritual circle that I run in, we practice the Maiden, Mother, Queen, and Crone sort of sequence of a woman's life. And there's even this woman's circle that I take part in. We have a woman's coming of age, rites of passage sort of ceremony that in the woman's mysteries retreat sort of thing. And so we, it's very sacred, it's secretive, so I can't really give any information about it, but it's a really beautiful experience. And so I've partaken it. And something that I learned from it was that I've learned a lot about the Queen, but I haven't, and I've learned a little bit about Maiden, and it's not quite time for me to learn about the Crone, even though I understand the basics about the Crone. I'm not in that stage of life yet. So I realized that I've totally bypassed the Mother, and it kind of sort of makes sense, but at the same time, I understand that it's important to tap into. But for me, being the age that I am, I also haven't, given birth to any children. So, why would I look at the mother archetype? But then I realized, it's not just birthing children, it's also birthing ideas and creativity and sexuality and nurturing and kindness. And, it's all these different aspects. And so I was like, wow, I have actually birthed quite a few ideas into the world. And so that's how I've been working with the Mother. And so that was a really beautiful experience for me to honor. And then, okay, so what does the archetype of the Divine Mother feel like? I want to connect with her. And so I'm sitting at my altar and I'm crying and I'm using my rattle and I'm connecting with my spirit team. And I just was suddenly filled with this sense of unconditional love. And it's a feeling that honestly I haven't ever felt before. I've felt love and I've felt loving, but this level of unconditional love was nothing I'd ever experienced before. And there's a certain kind of grief that I hold that I've had to work through, is that I've lost a number of my ancestors, my grandparents, my elders, before I was old enough to grieve. And so part of my grief is that I never got to know them as adults. I never got to know them. And that there's a certain amount of sadness around that. And so what was really cool is that in that moment when I was feeling that unconditional love, I saw my grandparents, my grandmas above me, and I could just feel their love, even though they weren't in person. It was just, it was so beautiful and gentle and almost palpable. It was just really beautiful. But the thing is that I was so malnourished to that feeling that my cells literally didn't know what to do with that feeling. And it's almost like my body was rejecting it. It just didn't, it was almost like oil and water. It was just, or water off a duck's back. It just was not penetrating. It wasn't sinking in. It's like, okay, it's there, but my body doesn't know how to take it in. And I just had this sense that I was so emaciated from this. Even though I had felt love throughout my life, like this level of unconditional love, my body just wasn't experienced with it. And so it took me actually quite some time for me to shift and allow. And, if people get, what is it, hypothermia or something like that, you can't just throw them into something warm. You have to slowly acclimate them back into a higher temperature. And I feel like that's kind of what happened with me, is that I needed to process and slowly open up myself and be able to handle that level of unconditional love. And now it's like, it's no big deal, and it's something I can tap into, but it was a very foreign feeling. So there's that. It felt like if I had any kind of crack, the Divine Mother came in and put spackle all over those holes and all over those cracks. And it was probably, if I'm honest, one of the things that has pushed me onto my spiritual journey. Like, that is what I've been looking for. Yes, I've been hungry for an understanding of spirituality and the higher power and all these other things, and to know thyself. But I feel like that connection is ultimately what I, on a deep level, was looking for, and didn't even realize that's what it was until I actually found it. So that was a process. I don't do anything small, I'll just say it. So there's that happening. And then at the same time, this word despair, I was like, what is this about? Because clearly I got to do something. Like, clearly this is coming up. What do I need to know? And so I just sat there once again, still at my altar. And I was like, what does despair look like for me? Like, what's the aspect of me that feels despair? And so I got a vision, and I don't typically get visions, but this is really what I want to share. It was the Divine Mother, but then it's also this vision that I wanted to share. So I see myself from first person. I'm seeing into this cave, and it's dark. And in the back of the cave, I see this like shape. And I've got a lantern or flashlight, or I've got something that's kind of illuminating my path. And so I'm walking further deep into this cave, and all of a sudden I see this body of a woman. And she's on the ground. She's covered in barbed wire. She's tattered. She's dirty. She's curled up in a fetal position. It's still a lot for me to talk about because, yeah, it was pretty heavy. So because she's an aspect of me, she's smaller than me. She's a younger version of me. So I, the adult, I pick her up and I hold her in my arms, and she's probably 10 or 12 or something like that. But anyways, I'm carrying her through out of the cave, down this path, and I carry her into another cave. But in this cave is the cave of the Divine Grandmother, of the grandmother archetype. And she's sitting down on the ground, and she's got this old, deep crimson red sarong around her waist, and she's got like the long black hair, and her skin and her face is weathered and old and wise. And I bring my wounded aspect to the grandmother. And the grandmother opens her arms, and I set her in her lap, and it was a heavy vision, but this sense of like, okay, it's going to be okay. And so I was able to somehow leave that vision and then get back into the 3D, quote unquote, real world, and go about my day and have dinner and whatnot. But I was still able to somehow check back in to this vision. And so I checked in later on the day, and she was still there, but it was almost like the grandmother was nursing her back to life and nursing her to feel better. And so I check in the next day, and the girl is still in the grandmother's lap, but she, instead of being tattered and whatnot, she's now covered in this white flowy fabric. Oh, it's maybe a dress or something like that, but she's got this like scarf type thing around her body as like a drape. So then I realized that her arms are no longer really curled into like the fetal position. Her arms have opened up a little bit, and I'm now able to see that she's holding a cat. And so I see this cat, and in my vision, I take this cat out of her arms. And very similar to the girl, this cat is tattered, it's dirty, it's seen better days, it's emaciated, I could see its ribs, it's scrawny, it's scared, it's shivering and shaking. And so I take this cat, and I realize in that moment that this cat is my trust. And so I take a second, I'm like, okay, what is the most loving thing I can do for this cat? Clearly, if it's my trust and it's in this sort of state, it needs a replenishment of trust. And it also needs a replenishment of faith and hope. And so I give it a saucer of milk with the intentions that this is a replenishment of my trust, of my faith, of my hope for this little being to take in and heal itself. And not even sure if it's going to work or not, but I'm like, I don't know what to do in this situation. Let's try this. So then once again, I kind of set that, all right, let that be. And then I go off and I do my thing in the 3D and come back and I check on it the next day. And it was a beautiful sight where the grandmother is there. She's still sitting on the ground, but the girl and the cat, they're like dancing and singing, and I can't really hear anything, but I can definitely see that they're like dancing around this little fire that's in the cave, and the grandmother's like happy and joyful and clapping, and it's very joyful. They're rejoicing, and it's just a really moving vision. And so that's what really helped to shift some things for me. And so I feel like connecting with that Divine Mother was really what helped to heal a lot of that deep inner stuff. And so why am I sharing all this? It's coming back to the place of this moment helped me heal some really deep things for me to really embody the trust in myself, to honor myself, and to choose me and what's right for me despite the other people in my life, to uphold my personal boundaries of what I feel is right. And it's going to upset some people around me. And some people might stay and some people might go. But I have actually created a beautiful relationship with my mother now. So not everyone goes away. Not everyone has to go away. But sometimes things need to change. Because how things were before are not going to sustain now. And sometimes the relationships that we think are going to carry with us through to the next chapter might not be good enough for us in our next iteration of ourselves. And that's okay. Sometimes people are only here for a season. And I also needed to know that because that partner that I was with, while we were able to reconcile some things, he also ended up, getting his third strike. And so I was like, okay, all right, well, I need to move out. With all due respect, this isn't going to work out for me because these are my boundaries and you have disrespected them. And, you have to, it's got to be a pretty big, oops, It's got to be a pretty big mess up in order for me to finally get to this point. But 3 strikes are out, you know. You get 3 chances to protect my heart. And if you fail, then you know what? We're done here. You had your chance. So that's the whole other thing. So moving beyond this whole experience, probably another 6 months after that healing, I ended up getting a concussion and then healing from that. And then maybe about 4 months later after that, I slipped on some stairs and I injured my neck and got what's called a post-concussive syndrome, which is basically, that concussion that you had, it's back. Enjoy, good times. So all of my concussion symptoms came back with full force and double. So like vertigo was worse. And it basically got to a point where I had to take FMLA because I was not recovering and I was not healing. And so when I was finally in my FMLA time, my body was basically trying to tell me things that I was not listening to. And there were some really good things about the relationship, but there was also some things that I was keeping myself small to make them comfortable, which is very much what I had done a lot in my life. I'm going to keep myself small so that, other people can shine, so that other people can feel comfortable, so I don't make them feel uncomfortable. Yes, in a variety of different ways. It shows up in a lot of different ways, but that was like, that's a pattern. That's definitely a pattern. Let me take a back step from that. Like, what does it look like if I don't do that? And unfortunately, there was really no way to not do that in the relationship with the different scenarios. And this message has already gone on pretty long, so I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of that. Long story short, I decided that, okay, I need to move. And so this healing, I feel like, really helped to buoy me to fortify the trust in myself and my path and what's true for my heart, regardless of other people and regardless of what's going on. So I had to, what felt true for me is I needed to quit my job and I needed to break up with my boyfriend and I needed to move. And so I moved across the country. And I did not do it blind, although I did go sight unseen, but I was not totally blind because I had 2 aces in my back pocket. One, I did an astrology reading with a dear friend of mine, and she basically was like, everything in your chart talks about absolute upheaval in your life. That, there's something going, like there's going to be a change with your job. There's going to be a change with your relationships. There's going to be a change with your location. And she's like, you are on time. You are right on time. Like, this is exactly what's going on. So I was like, okay, this is meant to be. This is in my chart. I just have to walk. It's like driving in a car with, dim lights and you're in fog. You're on a road, you can't quite see very far, but you're heading in the right direction. And that's just basically what I was doing. But then also I did some astrocartography and I looked at the energy of, where my natal chart is. And astrocartography is basically astrology, but land-based. It's pretty amazing stuff. And at first I'm a huge skeptic, believe it or not, but I checked into it, and I've had some experiences where I'm like, no, that actually is legit. And I've talked to some friends, and there definitely some supporting information around that. So I looked at it and I found out that where I was living would make me inherently anxious. And that is actually something that I struggled with for quite some time. So where I ended up moving was actually between my sun line and my Venus line. So really great juju. And so I've only been here for a few months because I'm private, don't really want to give out details. Suffice to say, it's been a lot. And so where we're at now with, the end of 2025, the beginning of 2026, there even though there's been a lot of change, and probably for a lot of people out there who's had to change things in their life and, make different decisions and, end things, begin things. That's definitely what this year, this 2025 year of the snake has been about, is shedding the old skin, letting go. But I want to speak to the fact that there could still be grief. Even though it was a really good thing for some of the things that I did, there's still some grief of letting go of the familiar, letting go of the old. And there's fear about stepping into the new. And then there's the sacred pause before it all shifts. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. And so while we could freak out and lose that sense of faith, Spirit is telling me that it's even more important to double down, to just really honor that sense of faith that we have, because the faith is what's going to help guide us through that dark. The faith is going to be those lights on the car heading into the dark. We might not be able to see very far, but we know we're heading in the right direction. And we are, as a society, as a collective, we are heading in a more empowered, a more sovereign time. Like the astrology speaks about it, but we've got some band-aids we got to rip off first. There's a lot of old structures that we have to dismantle and rebuild. And I'm not saying it has to get cataclysmic or anything like that. I really don't think that it does. I think a lot of people think that it does, but I don't think that it has to look that way. It doesn't have to look like utter destruction. But we do have to let go of old beliefs. And I think that that's true for us personally, and I think that that's true collectively. So that's where we're at. We're in the liminal space. The year of the fire horse doesn't really kick off until the middle of February. So we're in this it's right there. It's right there. And we can feel it. We can feel it coming. The good stuff, it's here, but we can't see it yet. It's just right around the corner. And it's, a lot of people talk about when plants are growing, you put the seeds in and you're like, is it even doing anything under there? Because it's in the dark. We can't see. We have to hold faith that that seed is growing, that spirit, that nature is doing its job. And we are. A lot of us are doing the hard work. But right now, it's just a hard time because we haven't really been able to see any benefits. And that's where a lot of people stop and cut themselves short, because they're just like, well, I don't see any benefits, so I'm just going to stop, because what's the point? That's the test. That's part of the test. It's part of the situation. That's part of the transition. It's part of the transformation. So friends, how you doing? Thank you for sticking around. I just want to let you know you're not alone. And sometimes we get into these phases, and this is a really pivotal time for not just us, but just us as a collective, as humanity. It's a moment that we're all going to look back at, like that's when things really started to change. And I'm sure the more you look at it, like it'll start unraveling later and later, but this is a pivotal time. So yeah, be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. Breathe. Breathing practices are really great. But even just tuning into one breath at a time and feeling your feet. And then, the 3, 2, 1, 3 things around you that you can see, and, a couple words that you can say for yourself, and then listening to a breath. There's lots of different breakdowns of things that you could do like that, but just ways to presence yourself, to get back into your body, to not get caught up in the fray, however it'll show itself. And there's so much out there of confusion, both, sometimes some content creators want to create that confusion, but we have to find our own eye of the storm where there's peace in the midst of chaos. And we have to figure out what that is for each one of us. And it's going to look different for each one of us because we're all different. We all have different backgrounds and what speaks to us. So I pray that you find yours. And I pray that we all can find our buoy in the ocean or life raft or some way to help soften our edges in this time that could be really difficult. But again, the ultimate basis of this message is that you're not alone. Like, we're all going through this, friend. So I'll leave it at that. I want to thank you for your time. Until then, take care, fierce hearts.